Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Maps and Graps. This is actually the second anniversary episode, just a few days late, because I wasn't going to pressure myself to record that. I was actually having fun this weekend. Um, but as always, I'm your host, Lyric Swinton, and my guest. I don't think I even have to introduce him. I think everybody knows who he is. We have
For better or for worse, y'all know who I am.
I feel like one way or another, everybody knows who he is. We have Ibou on the pod today.
Yes,
How are
sir.
you?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. I'm cool. I I'm not a big afternoon podcast person. However, you make exceptions for certain people, and I've always actually wanted to be on a show with you. And we've
Okay.
talked about like collabing at least for
Yeah.
like a year. So,
Yes.
better late than never. About damn time. I'm on Maps and Grabs, and I said yes before I even knew what we was talking about because it's just wrestling, man. You roll the ball out, and you just do what you got to do. You know what I mean? So
You know what? I actually asked you to come on before I even knew what we were talking about too. So
exactly, because it's wrestling. You know what I mean?
you
So
know,
it's wrestling. So I'm excited to be here. I'm happy to be here. Um, I'm ready for whatever you throw at me, lyric. Hello to the Maps and Graphs audience. If you don't know me, I'm Ibou of Wrestle Purist of Ibou of Self Made, Ibou of Wrestling Twitter, whatever you want to label me as. I don't even have labels anymore. I'm just the dude on Twitter. But I'm happy to be here, and I'm excited for what we get into today.
I feel like a lot of us we've gotten past the point to where like you don't even know where people know you from. It's just it is what
Right.
it is. It is what it is at this point. Like people
I'm
can
just
be
here,
tweeting
man.
the craziest stuff these days, and it's just like I don't even. Somebody on Twitter said I didn't even know you had a podcast. I said, huh?
You're like,
They're like,
what?
I didn't even know you did that. I just thought you just tweet all the time. And I don't know if that's a compliment or what, but we're just gonna keep it moving.
Yo, lyric. The funniest part about this is you know what is like I don't know if it's humbling because I don't, to be honest, I actually don't have like an ego about this wrestling stuff, but it did hit me in a funny way where I thought like people kind of knew who I was, and then I remember when I first went on Fightful with Sean Rossap, right? I was
Mhm.
reading comments like, this Ibou guy is interesting. I've never seen him. I'm like, nigga, I've been here. What are you talking about? You know what I mean? It's just it's so like it's so funny how the culture and the different spaces in the community are so kind of segmented. Like they're like different
Absolutely.
worlds. They're different worlds, you know. But then conversely, there's like really, really popular like wrestling content creators that like have like you like click them and you see like their numbers, the subscribers are like they're based on TikTok, whatever. And I've never heard of them, right? Because they're just
Exactly. No pop. Sorry.
no, it's just
Um,
no, I'm not even coming at no. It's just like they're in a totally different world. They'll make like
yeah.
WWE reaction videos or something, right? I'm like, I don't know who the fuck that is, you know. But wait, can I curse on this?
Yeah, yeah.
All right, cool.
I do.
So see, I don't know who that is, and then like I'll click them and it's like 1 million. I'm like, damn, what the fuck, you know? And they're like reacting to Rhea Ripley or something.
As I've
But
gotten older, though, I think that that is one thing that I love about wrestling, and I wish that people like embraced more because I
mhm.
feel like there's a space for everybody. Whether it's like
Yes,
the
yes,
people who just sit around on 2K all day and do creator wrestlers all day, or
hmm
whether it's like the old school mid South historians or whatever the fuck they
hmm
do, or you'll have like your New Japan purists, or you'll have
hmm
like your your Joshi purists, you'll have like your WWE diehards. I feel like like because of this effort to be like supreme over all things, people have like completely negated that wrestling's not supposed to be that way. Like it's okay for us to all have one lane and like do our own thing, and
There's nothing
that
wrong with having your own
there's
lane.
nothing wrong with that. Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with it. I wish, like you said, I wish I was embraced, and I also wish people just kind of respected that too. Like, one of the things that I love about your contribution to this community, lyric, is that I feel like there's so much wrestling out there that should be highlighted, right? And this is not me coming at people who are more conventional in their approach to content creation and they focus on the biggest promotions and they go, look, man, I'm in America. I focus on WWE and AEW and I'm going to cover WWE and AEW, right? Like, that's fine. That's fine, right? But there's so many people that will overlap on this very wide section that controls most of the market share. And I get it from like a number standpoint, from an attention standpoint, all that stuff, right? But it kind of does suck a little bit, like when significant things happen in the business, but are like off the radar of those two main promotions, for example, sometimes it just doesn't get the coverage that I wish it did from like people that I know would be talented enough to pull it off properly. You know what I mean? And so this is a random thing, but like Yoshinari Ogawa retired this year, right?
Yeah.
And he's a very important. He's one of the most important and key B players in Japanese wrestling of the last like 25, 30 years. And he never really was a super big star or anything like that, but like a guy who was always by Misawa's side, a really good hand, a guy who was in some great tag matches with Misawa in All Japan and in Pro Wrestling Noah, a great vet, you know what I mean? And like that's a dude that he retires. You would love to see like people kind of like chronicling his career, covering it, blah blah blah. Or beyond that, when my man passed away, God,
Grand Hamada.
Grand Hamada passed away, right? Like I made a long post about it. And here's the thing, like this is not me saying, oh, y'all should know about these dudes, y'all should, but like it would be cool if the people that did like were able to kind of like get a megaphone out and be like, yo, y'all should kind of like, I'm gonna point y'all to this, and this, because these people were very important to the craft and to the business and to the promotions that they worked for and affected, you know. And like, again, it's like, I'm not saying, oh my God, what culture, like make a fucking video about like Grand Hamada, but also
Please
like,
don't. Please don't. Actually,
yeah, right. I'm not, I'm not coming at nobody. I like actually like what culture. I like the guys at what culture, but like my point is like, it just, I think it's very necessary for people to be out there doing that because these are like niches to fill. And I remember a couple of years ago, Lyric, when I first got into this wrestling space, right? I didn't do it to like be a content person. Genuinely, Lyric, I just I was like, yo, I want to tweet about wrestling and I don't want to bother my mutuals that don't give a shit about wrestling. So I made another account, right? And then that ended up being Bank of Payman, right? Yeah. And so I did that and I'm tweeting. And I remember like it was a pandemic, people were doing spaces all the time, right? And I would talk about wrestling. And I remember when people would give me advice about that type of thing, right? Like I just thought there was something super cynical about people kind of giving me advice because it felt like it was more about like, rather than love of the game, it's just like, here's what's going to work for you.
That's a whole another conversation. That's a
right.
Whole, yeah.
And to me, it was a lot of kind of like, hey, bro, at the end of the day, man, this is the game. You know, you got to review SmackDown, my nigga. And it's like, what if I don't want to? You know what I mean? What if I don't want to? You know, maybe I just want to, I don't know. I've been watching DDT, bro. Maybe can I cover DDT? And niggas is like, yo, niggas ain't watching that. And it's like, all right, I guess. But, and I realized eventually, it's like, no. Actually, if you get yourself over in this community, people will watch you talk about anything. I've learned that, Lyric. I've said that to people within WrestlePeers. I've said that directly to Monty, Lyric. I've said to him, like, yo, it doesn't matter what the fuck I cover because
it's about likability.
What's up?
It's about likability.
Right. And here's the thing. If people like you and they respect what you bring to the table and they enjoy listening to you, they're just going to hang out with you. And when you talk about wrestling that they're not familiar with, I mean, some people are going to turn it off because they're not, you know, familiar. They're not interested. But a lot of people I've learned are like, yo, I've never really heard of that guy. I've never like, can you point me to somewhere? I'll talk about old wrestling all the time, Lyric. And people are like, yo, what's the best Vader match I should check out? I'm like, oh, blah, 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 blah. Just in my Discord the other day, yo, what are 5 Terry Funk matches I should watch? Blah, 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 blah. You know, I'm watching a Saito Brothers match in the Discord like 2 months ago, and people are like, yo, these dudes are kind of tough. And I know you got to talk to them, but like,
yes,
that's the thing. Like, and shout out to you for that, but like, that's so fucking important. And so I'm talking a lot about myself, but I'm tying this back to you in this sense. What you do is very important because not a lot of people that are Americans in this space are doing it. Like just highlighting and covering and shining a light on wrestling that I think is underrepresented. And so it's just important, and I hope more people follow in that trend.
Yeah, thank you. Honestly, it wasn't intentional. It was very similar in the sense like I've been a fan for a long time, but I think honestly, I find it hard to stay a wrestling fan. I found it hard to stay a wrestling fan by watching the same TV stuff. Like it was like so hard, and I would go like these long gaps, and then honestly, like just between college and then working, I was working campaigns after, so I never really had time. So once I had time on my hands, it just you finally have time to explore everything. But I also think like it's kind of important just for people to have context. Like go ahead, like you were saying, like Grand Hamada, right? that original basis of the lucha and puro style, like, melding together, like the junior heavyweight style of when you look at things like, Best of the Super Juniors, when you look at things like Fantastica Mania, that's part of the roots of, like, where that type of stuff comes from.
Yes.
And even like, Yoshinari Agawa, Zack Sabre Jr., Ryohei Oiwa, over this year, TMDK, even if
Mm-hmm.
you don't know why it's happening, you can, whether you know it or not, you see the fruit of all of these things. And so I've always been like a very curious spirit. Like everybody, like I went to high school with, will tell you, like I've always been like super, I can't use that word, but I've always been like super hyper fixated whenever I
Yes.
get to the bottom of something. Like I've always just wanted to know like the answer to things. And it just kind of spitballed, and then suddenly I was in Japan. And then
Exactly.
it was so cool. I think this past year, like, January 4th this year, I didn't get to go, but so many women, specifically
Mm-hmm.
women my age, reached out to me and was like, yeah, like I went this year because I saw you go and I saw you talk about this stuff. And like I went to like this show and I went to this show and I went to this show because I saw you talking about it. And so it is really cool. And it's not even to like, toot your own horn or anything, but
Mm-hmm.
I think that age is so important, like I and I think there's a generational gap in wrestling. And I talked a little bit about it on Twitter, in the sense, I think it was when, what was it? Was it when Bret Hart said what he said recently, or it was Kevin Nash, or
Mm-hmm.
I was saying that in the streaming era, particularly since WWE and AEW are on streaming, the audience is swinging younger,
Mm-hmm.
in the sense of as more time goes by, the voices of these attitude era guys, it means less and less to this crop of fans, I
Mm.
think there's a certain level of reverence, and respect, and I'm not saying like nobody at my age 27 respects any of those guys. Like obviously I watch a lot of old wrestling, but I think that it's going to matter less and less. Like these 20-year-old, respectfully, like these 20-year-old Liv Morgan stands, they don't give a fuck, bro.
No,
They
no,
don't
no. No, they do not. No, they do not.
care, bro.
You'll show one of them stands a graphic of Brett and Austin, and they'll be like, "What does that mean to me?" You know what I mean? And that's for better or for worse. And that reflects like a lot of aspects of culture. You know what I mean? Like
100%.
I'll see how like these young people will talk about like just like well regarded musicians from like the past. And I'm like, yo, this is crazy. Yo, this is crazy, son. Like,
Absolutely. Like, and the Grammys really woke that up for me. I think
mm-hmm.
I said, oh my God, we've not just losing recipes, we've lost recipes. Like you'll talk to people about, yeah, man, like, back in the day when Nas and Jay-Z used to go at it, they'll be like, young boy better. And then that's it.
It's insane.
They
You
don't.
know, you know what's the funny thing about this lyric? Like 10 years ago, I would listen to like Dave Meltzer or whoever talk about wrestling, right? And they would say that wrestling had a problem with the audience aging up because for the longest time, lyric, it it was almost like borderline statistically proven that like the last gigantic, major, big wave of new fans being created had happened like in the late 90s, early 2000s, and that wrestling was just living off those people who were just kind of hanging around and continuing to pursue that as an interest and hobby. And so that's why like a lot of wrestling fans, they were in their 30s, like most like the biggest like um portion of them were like in their 30s and 40s. And for years though, the talk I always heard was like, oh my god, how is WWE going to make new young fans? How is this promotion going to make young fans? How are we going to make young fans? There's no young fans, blah 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 blah, right? And it's just kind of like remarkable to see now that I think in the last like handful of years, a lot of people have gotten into wrestling in this period that are young. Like I'll see accounts tweet about things like that. Like I'll see tweets where they'll say, "When did you get into wrestling?" And it blows my mind. Like people are like, "Oh, I started in 2018. I started in 2019. I started in 2020." I'm like, "What?" Like it's like unfathomable to me. You know what I mean? Because like for the longest time, I'd be on the internet and I felt like I was the newbie because I would write in like a reply thing like 2002 was my first exposure to wrestling, and people in replies like 1984,
Yeah.
1990, and I'm like, damn, you know what I mean? So, but what comes with that, I think, is I think it's a good thing that new people are getting into this medium and going back. The important thing is to, and not in a gatekeeping way, and not in like an asshole pretentious way, but to be inviting to these people in the sense of like putting them on to like the great just like the greatest stuff that's happened in the history of the business. Basically, it's kind of
Correct.
like my point. You know what I mean? And
And it's going to be objective.
mm-hmm,
It's
mm-hmm.
going to be really objective. And I think a really good example of that is women's wrestling.
Yeah.
And I think because there are a lot of new fans who were created right around that women's revolution time.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that, and I feel like they got so accustomed, like, they came in at a time where like women were main eventing and it felt like, this is going to be the norm forever. And I think now where we are here in 2025 of you don't see those things happening as regularly. And those fans are really like, what happened? Like, this used to be the norm. But also, too, we're still less than 20 years removed from bra and panties matches.
Yeah.
It takes a much longer time than a good 5 years to truly change the trajectory of American women's wrestling. Like, I don't even think that we are only really, I would say, maybe in stage one, maybe stage two, of reversing a lot of the damage that was done systemically. And I don't think people were prepared for that type of, like, I guess, like the infrastructure that goes into making this
Yes.
the norm, like it's a much bigger building period. And what I liken it to is soap opera. So like there's this new soap opera out. They don't even really make new soap operas like that, but it's new. It's all black soap opera.
Mm-hmm.
And it's on CBS, and I've been watching it, and I actually really enjoy it. I grew up watching like soap operas with my grandma,
Mm-hmm.
but in the face group, like all the younger fans, like they're talking about, why does it move like this? Why does it move so slow? Why do they talk? Why do they do like this? Because they've never seen a soap opera
they're
before.
not familiar with that type of
And,
yeah.
and they don't realize, like, most of the soap operas that are still on television, they've been on television anywhere between 20 and 40 years. Like this is a long-term storytelling entity. You're much like wrestling. You're not going to be able to catch up on it like you're not going to be able to catch up on every single thing. It airs every day, every week, rain or shine, and it's hard for, I think, new generations to understand the infrastructure that goes into it, and the basically, like, it takes a while for things to legitimately change for the long term. And so I've been watching like these patterns and these audience patterns and how people react to certain things, and it's just been really interesting, I think, because I've been doing since 2006, right? So but most of my peers, I think, who are my age, particularly women, a lot of them came in through the Total Divas era,
Right.
two completely different entrance points,
Right.
and
Right.
two completely different ways of seeing things as far as, like, wrestling. And I think that we all are, especially as you look at Twitter, I think we're all having to reckon with that, of all of us have completely different entrance points and ideas of what we think wrestling should be.
And watching those different crowds who each of them feel very passionate about women's wrestling but want completely different things out of women's wrestling. It's really fascinating to see them coexist, because like you'll see them asking for different things. You know what I mean? When I first came in also to wrestling Twitter, Lyric, some of the early spaces I was in, because I didn't give a fuck. I would talk to anybody. I didn't give a fuck. I was in spaces with like stands, like just gay stands, or just like young women. Like I was in spaces with stands. They range from like 16 to like 22, and they're just talking about like the shit that they liked about wrestling, right? And I'll just pop in, and like it's funny because I had a preconceived, I just had like my way of seeing things, right? And I would just listen to like what they liked out of wrestling and what they wanted, right? And I'm not saying that like by the end of these conversations or whatever that I'm like, oh, this is now how I feel about wrestling. But it was just kind of good to know that that's kind of how people like looked at it, if that made any sense. And I know I'm not like elaborating, but like,
No, it makes sense. And I think also too, of, even if I don't, one thing that I will say, especially over these last 2-3 years, that I've learned is a sense of understanding. And like, I don't agree with like 90% of like staying Twitter of what they say, but I do understand how and why they feel the way they feel. And I think that actually listening to them, like, like I said, everybody, I believe that audience segmentation is a good thing. You know, like I think that
Mm-hmm.
different groups are looking for different things. They want different things out of their wrestling. Now, do I think that there are some harms to it? I think, especially in the women's wrestling, I think that I tweeted this the other day. I think that, don't get me wrong, I love a good gear, I love a good look, but I do worry that that is occupying most of the conversations rather than the actual wrestling. But that's just going to be my cross that I have to bear for probably the next 10 years.
It's funny you brought that up because one thing people love to talk about, like I've seen people tweet this, they go like, "Yo, man, a lot of Rhea Ripley fans, they never talk about her as a wrestler," and it's crazy because I she doesn't even wrestle that much, but I like Rhea as a professional wrestler. I like watching her wrestle, and I feel like a lot of Rhea's own fan base don't even go like, "Yo, I like when she does. I like this thing she does in matches." You know, like it's just kind of crazy to reckon with. They just like how she comes off and how she looks and things like that. Um, if you don't want to give a take, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think part of that is also because we are, I think we are now in a time to where we are not just amongst wrestling fans, we are amongst, we're in the influencer generation, you know? Like this is a very much so an influencer generation, and there are some
Yeah,
people who are willing to tap into anything if they like how somebody looks. And that's just the truth, whether it's
yeah.
K-pop, whether it's a TV show, whether it's a movie, whether influencer marketing runs the world. Like that's just where we are at this point. And of course, wrestling was going to be a part of that. And let's just be real. The
Mhm.
women have always been the most on paper marketable people, I would say, from wrestling. They just never got the push. I think social media has now equalized the playing field in a bit of
Mhm.
whether a company is or isn't doing something. At the end of the day, you have a phone, you have a TikTok account, you can do whatever, you can go viral.
You,
That's just the truth. People might not even know what you actually do for real, but they know they see you in their For You page. You know, they might not know what you do for real, and I think that's where we are.
lyric. You know what's insane
Entry
about that?
point.
You know what's insane about that lyric?
Oh,
Out of the blue, months ago, a cosplayer slash sex worker hits me up, lyric, and I was like, "Hello," and then she just goes like, "Hey, I'm not super familiar with wrestling, but I see you tweeting about wrestling on my feed." I was like, "Uh-huh," and she basically goes, "So like, Rhea Ripley, she's a big star, right?" I'm like, "Yes, she is a massive star." She goes, "Cool, because I'm thinking of cosplaying her." She basically was asking me to give her game on like, does this person matter if I cosplay her, or like, does no one give a fuck? Do the streets not fuck with her? And I was like, "No, the streets fuck with her." She's like, "Bet, thank you," and I was like, "You're welcome." It was the randomest thing, and like she had a
that's where we are. It's the truth,
yes,
though.
yes, yes. It's a
And
real thing,
and I don't think it's anything against Rhea. I think at this point,
right?
honestly, to be quite honest, I'm gonna be honest. I'm not as high on Rhea as a wrestler as I
Mm-hmm.
used to be, but I think a
Mm-hmm.
part of it is because she doesn't wrestle very often. I don't
Yeah.
think I really liked the singles match of her since Charlotte at WrestleMania. I'm gonna be honest, but
Yeah.
what I will say, seeing where women in the industry are right now, and I think like it feels like this deadlock to the main event and all these things. In a way, I feel like you have to do what you have to do to establish any kind of parity right now. And I think everybody's going to have their different lanes of how they do it.
How to achieve that? Yeah.
Everybody's not going to agree on how they do it. I'm always going to be partial to somebody like a Mercedes, right? Of who wants
Mm-hmm.
to travel the world and wrestle all over the world. But I think that what we're seeing from all of these women in every single company right now, even over in Japan, like
Mm-hmm.
think of somebody like Mina Shirakawa.
Right.
Everybody is literally throwing whatever at the wall and hopes it sticks, because at the end of the day, everybody wants to be on top,
Mm-hmm.
and what on top looks very different. And I think that nobody wants to be left behind,
You know what's
and
a
so
good
we
example of
kind
this?
of agree with it. Hey, huh?
You know what's a good example of that is Harley Cameron is somebody who clearly in real life has a bunch of different talents, right?
Correct.
And it appears like she basically just decided whether this applies to pro wrestling and wrestling television or not, I'm gonna just throw all of it on TV and just see what connects and how much more over it gets me, you know?
And she's tried it in so many different ways, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
from the QTV stuff, which didn't land, originally,
Hmm.
to like what she's doing now, in the sense of you have to. What I will say for women, a lot of the women on screen versus a lot of the men, they're so much more adaptable because they have to be. So they're willing to like, okay, this gimmick doesn't work, let's pick up a new one. They're like, this doesn't work,
Yep.
let's try something new. Like, they're going to continue to like cycle out different things because there is no room for failure. Like there genuinely is no room for failure. And there's a level of hunger that from the top of the card to the bottom of the card, I would say for women's wrestling, doesn't matter who it is, that all of them have, just because they're all everybody, no matter if they're making $1 million or 10,000, they're all coming from behind in a sense.
Yeah, they know that you have to have this trade or else you're just not going to last, unfortunately. And under the main event scene, you're seen as like dispensable. So
Absolutely.
it's a consequence of that. It's a consequence of that. Um, it's it's really a crazy time. If you don't feel like giving a take on this, I totally get it. But I'm curious what you think about this. Now, this is obviously from a reality show, so this could easily just be like a work for TV. But just in general, the sentiment. What did you make of like when Mickey James was kind of telling that trainee to get better gear?
Mm. So I feel two ways about it.
Hmm.
I understand where Mickey is coming from just
Hmm.
because I watched her era, and I
Right.
think that that's the difference. Like I was saying before, I watched her era.
You were
So
there. Yeah.
so I can see exactly where all of her fears and everything comes from. So I can empathize with that. However, like I said, kind of like going back to the Rhea stuff, I think one, women should be able to walk in their sexuality in whatever way that they're comfortable with.
Hmm.
But I think two, at the end of the day, this is where we are. Like this is where we this is where we are. And I think especially with young girls coming up through the
Hmm.
industry, especially from as low of a level, as on that show.
Right.
I don't
Right.
even watch, I only saw the clip.
Yeah,
But
yeah, no, no. She's a performance center trainee. She was doing a practice match.
yes,
Mickey was like, "Yo, you're cool and all. Get better gear." Like
there are
that's the whole
bigger,
context.
I feel like there are bigger battles that we should be fighting.
Hmm.
There are bigger battles that I would love legends to be speaking on.
Mm.
Actually be speaking on. Um,
Right, right.
I think also too, it goes back to those things. It goes back to that what I was saying earlier in the sense of I'm hearing too much about gears and looks and appearances
Right.
and not enough about actual wrestling.
Yeah.
And I think specifically, we don't have a lot of women's legends. Think about how many people actually get to come back and go out on their own terms and actually be able to.
Very rare. It's very
Very
rare.
rare. And so I think that that platform needs to be used really carefully. I'm huge fan of Mickey James.
Yeah.
Huge fan. I went and met her while I was in London. But yeah, I get it. And so I'm never going to be like, oh yeah, she's just an old hack. I understand, but it's a different time. It's a completely different time. I think, and we have to assume we can't just assume that people are doing things because they're forced to.
Hmm.
Especially on that level, like that was probably something that she really wanted to wear. And
Hmm.
I think that there are bigger battles to fight. I just think that there are bigger battles to fight. And what I hate is that becomes a talking point for Twitter on 2 days.
Oh yeah.
For 2 days, like that becomes a viral clip, and everybody has an opinion on it. And now I have to listen to
Unsolicited opinions from people who shouldn't be giving them. Right.
particularly men,
Yes.
in
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
sense of the community is still mostly men, and so you have to listen to, well, this creepy old guy, well, I liked what she was wearing. Shut up. This is not about you. This is not about you,
That-
you sleazeball.
Lyric,
Oh,
you bring up a good point because like I feel like with women's issues in wrestling and also with issues pertaining to race, it's this slippery slope where I feel like there are some things that should be spoken about and touched on, but like we live in a sphere where unfortunately a lot of them would be better served being closed door conversations because Otherwise,
Are we
you're
going to
making
talk about it? Are we going to talk about it?
Hey, we'll get to it in a second.
Oh, okay. Okay. Cool. Go ahead. Go ahead. You got it.
You know you were just doing this. You know when Shaq starts making chuckle. He's like, what's so funny?
You didn't know what's crazy is because like when we were talking about doing this show, I specifically said I don't think we should talk about it. Or are we gonna talk about it? But you know what? At this point, everybody is, so we might as well talk about it.
Yeah. So my point is just I think that certain things should be closed door conversations because otherwise it just becomes fodder for the timeline, and it's not even about what you're arguing anymore. It's just niggas on Twitter just this is my take on it, my take. And it's like, bro, nobody asked you, bro. No one asked you. And it's not even, you're making it a this and a that. And so, like, if Mickey, like, let's say this is a total shoot, that's her real opinion, right? In a perfect world, it's not just a moment on TV. In a perfect world, it's, hey, Shorty, come here real quick. Yeah, boom, 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 and you say it, right? And obviously, with the thing that we're going to bring up here, in a perfect world, this is not podcast fodder that turns into tribalism, that turns into niggas in crowds acting a fool, and all everything that came with that. So yeah.
I think that's a good segue.
Yeah.
I think there's a larger conversation like to have.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll be honest, when it comes to this Swerve Booker stuff, I know maybe 25% of it.
Yeah.
I've had the words DJ Vlad and Booker T muted for like the last 2 years. So I've seen very minimal. No, seriously, I could be honest. I've seen very minimal of it. I've seen
congratulations.
I've seen the clips, like of course, from like NXT and after Dynasty.
Yeah.
I've seen and I saw like the original Swerve clip, and I saw like the original, like the quotes from Booker.
Yeah.
I
agree. So you didn't see the video of Booker like crashing out the first time?
Oh, absolutely not.
Because
I read part of the quotes though, like from it.
He was, so the first clip, he's mad as hell, and then after the fuck Booker thing from the pay-per-view, he decided, I don't know who talked to him. He completely flipped and was like, "Hey man, I wish nothing but the best for his brother." Da 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 da. The first time he was like, "Who are you to talk to me about what I was doing for black people? Who are you?" And he was like mad as hell about it. "Who are you to talk about what I'm doing for my community? I do it behind closed doors." Da 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 da. He's doing all that shit.
I feel like the biggest problem with all of this is that unfortunately, and I feel like many of us just keep passing by this point. The fact that we only have maybe 2 or 3 or 4 black male world champions even alive to even talk about stuff like this, that number is so small. Like that number is already like extremely small. And like it's gotten so bad to where like the tribalism has kind of like gotten over it. Like, we are not a monolith. There's not one person who is qualified or should speak on behalf of the entire community. It's not Swerve. It damn sure ain't Booker. No. And it damn sure ain't DJ Vlad.
Absolutely not. Absolutely.
And I'm gonna be honest. I really do kind of like hate that Swerve did the interview with DJ Vlad. I don't disagree with what he was saying. That was
not ideal, right? Like, yeah.
Yes, if he had done that on anybody else's podcast, and honestly, that I wouldn't have really seen a problem. But when you open the door for that person, that insurgent to come in, the
insurgent.
It is true. That insurgent to wreak havoc in the black community once again. I think he said this on Twitter, and I agree. I said he looked around, he saw music, he said, "Oh no, wrestling, that's where the real drama is."
Yes.
Take anything.
Yes. It felt like he was like, "I've been fucking with rappers for years. Let me fuck up the black wrestling community even more." He saw holes and cracks. He saw holes and cracks and said, "Let me get to it." You know what I mean?
Y'all gonna do just nice. Y'all gonna do real.
Oh my God.
And it's just really unfortunate. And I think I don't know. I think, how do I say it? I feel at this point, Swerve probably feels like he has to be on the defensive with a lot of, black wrestling. And I can understand it. Um, and I think that Booker feels like he is
Being attacked, I guess.
attacked, but I also think that he feels like he's I don't know, like he feels like his accolades have allowed him to where he can say anything of just like for me, the worst part of all this when he was like, there's no black wrestlers good enough right now.
that
And
was just that was just an unnecessary misstep and like objectively wrong. And if that's how you're gonna argue your point, like I don't know what you're doing, bro.
absolutely. And I think for Swerve, I don't think Swerve should take the bait. I think that he did a really good job for a long time of not taking the bait.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to try to debate you, like like that's one of those things, and it's one of those. It's gotten to the point to where I feel like some people use their dislike or feelings toward Swerve to kind of like X out all what's the really good things that I think that are happening with AEW's talent right now. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's a good idea to try overshadow that because honestly, the real talking point that should have came out of Dynasty, look at how many black men were on that card, bro. Like,
Lyric, I'm watching the
man,
show, and unless I miscounted, I think dating back from the pre-show's first match, the first like 5 wrestling matches involved black men.
correct. That's it, like, and that's the type of stuff that I can say as a wrestling fan who has been watching for a long time. I know we haven't seen it. Like
Yeah.
I know it hasn't happened, and it that is absolutely crazy. And I think, yeah, I hate that it went this far. And
Mm-hmm.
I just hate that we have to have this conversation in front of white people.
I
Real.
lyric. I'm gonna be honest with you. I wanted to. I mentally was like, I want to tweet this so bad. I literally wanted to tweet. Can we stop doing this in front of white people? And then I said, you know what? Let me leave this alone. Twitter's gonna get mad at me. They're gonna call me reverse racist and all that shit. So I'm not even gonna say nothing. But that's the actual honest truth. It feels like a weird, awkward thing where I'm like looking around both ways, and I'm like, you know what, man, fuck it. And it's just like, look, like I want to figuratively like pull like 10 people into a room, like, can y'all come here real quick and we just fucking, figure this out and then we move on. Because like you just said, like it's just now it's a situation where Swerve is in front of white fans going, man, fuck Booker, and then like, but then in reverse, these niggas are at the NXT show, like, doing the whole Swerve, we're coming for you, and fuck you,
Crazy.
Swerve chants
Crazy.
in Florida, and it's not just brothers doing them fuck you, Swerve chants, and I'm like, I wish I could interview one of these white fans and go, hello, sir, hello, Jared,
They just down for the ride, man.
why are you chanting fuck you, Swerve? I'd like you to elaborate. You know what I mean? And you realize like none of this is about what these niggas is arguing about. It's like it's not about what these niggas. You're just at NXT and that's your team and you got to put the jersey on. And it's like, look, I think fan tribalism about general things like I just like my show better than the other show. I think that's like healthy and fine, right?
I think it's so funny actually, and I think that's totally fine. It's like your sports teams, right? Like everybody does it.
Correct.
But I do think that right now the Swerve Booker stuff, and it should have. I wish in a better world, which we're not in.
No.
In a better world, it would have shed light on what is the bigger conversation, and it's not. But the bigger conversation is, and I think it should be, and it has to be. It is 2025. What are we doing with black talent? I think that's that at the end of the day, and that's what I always say about people just like who don't like Swerve. That's cool. Like I'm not trying to convince you to like him. Like I'm not. The only thing I know about Swerve is him as a wrestler. I don't know these people.
Right.
I don't know these people in real life. So
No.
your story, stick to it, whatever. But even if you do what, I'm just saying. At this point, I realize like I don't. Maybe I'm young enough to where I don't care. Most of these people who are beef are way older than me. Y'all, whatever, y'all got it. I don't care. And I've seen it myself. A lot of black wrestling Twitter is not always as welcoming to people who are not in the WWE space. I've seen it. I've experienced it. It's okay. Everybody. But I've seen it enough to be like, hey, whatever. At this point, I'm not trying to convince nobody. Do what you do.
Right.
at the same time, even if you don't like Swerve, I think you have to acknowledge and like what he represents in the
Correct.
sense of, guess what? Now we've gotten to a point in AEW, and I'm not even saying that AEW is perfect, because as we've seen, any wrestling company is capable of doing anything at any given time. It could change at literally any moment. And I've
Yes.
been watching wrestling enough to know that. But
Hmm.
we've got to a point in AEW to where even if Swerve is not on the show, multiple black talent are getting booked.
Yes.
And because it's a culture, that's the thing. The culture has shifted in the
Yeah.
sense of how AEW recruits is different. Look at, Kevin Knight. Look at, like, these shifts are very interesting. I don't think that it was a coincidence that, at the All In press conference, you have Swerve, Mercedes, and Athena. You have to acknowledge that at least on some level, there is an alternative company that is sending a clear message, because all of this, especially the way that the Dynasty card was structured, it's very clear. This is a clear message
Hmm.
from the company that we value black men here.
Hmm. And it's like, whether you even enjoy AEW as a professional wrestling product or
Right.
not, if you're somebody that champions yourself as someone who cares about the welfare of black people in wrestling, the prospects of success and opportunity for black people in wrestling, if you're somebody that wants to brand yourself as that, on some level, I do feel like you should at least acknowledge this. I'm not even saying like fucking throw pom poms up, but it's like, again, 4 years ago, Lyric, I was in all those fucking big group conversations where we were calling out, we were calling this stuff out, and I thought we were doing it in good faith, and I thought we were doing it because it was like, yo, man, there's some shit lacking over here, and I believed in that, and I felt that way, and I still stand by that. Like, AEW was a very white promotion, and look, if steps are taken, measures are taken, and the talent has been upgraded, and now a bunch of people are getting opportunities, then yeah, I think that should be celebrated. Because, like you just said, it's not like Swerve is just the token for this.
Mm-mm.
Kevin Knight just got a big opportunity on pay per view. He just got signed. Mercedes Moné is putting on. The Hurt Syndicate are doing their thing, and they're the tag champions. Up and down the show, you're seeing black people get opportunities from dudes in the lower mid card, on a random given collision, you'll see like the STP group guys, right?
Absolutely.
And then
Infiltrating all
all
the
yeah, right, all the way to the top of the card now with Swerve Strickland in the main event scene, like throughout, like every level of like the roster, you
every
know,
level.
at every level. And so that's just a cool and nice thing. And I really hate that. And again, this is what makes it so muddled and unfortunate, and also a tough conversation to have in front of the general public, because then other people with other interests try to butt in and give their opinion. And I really just didn't ask. I didn't ask. But like, we're now at a point where there's people not only who dismiss this or ignore it, they won't allow you. They won't allow you to just ask very fair questions
No,
about, ask very fair questions. I'm not even saying, yo, Triple H is a racist man that says the N word in Gorilla every day. I'm not even saying that. If you want to get mad about that, right. But very fair questions of, sir, you book the market leader. You book the market leader. You parade yourself around at the start of these shows. You are the face of the company at this point. Why, sir, do you put on these premium live events every month? And I feel like bugging out from Do the Right Thing. How come there ain't no brothers on the wall? What's going on? You know?
no.
And I think that's just a very fair question. That's a very, very fair question.
I also think too of just questions have been asked and answers have been given. People just ignore the answers. He
Yes.
told you how he felt. I'm gonna be honest. Booker T went, and I think that was the thing. Booker T basically told you too, in the sense of this is how they feel. They feel like none of y'all are good enough. Like
And
that,
and
that's what they said out their
and
mouths. They
and
said it.
and here's the thing, right? Let's say deep down what he's really saying is, man, I think Carmelo Hayes is whack. You know what I would say to that lyric? I'd
Well,
say, okay, bet I will reevaluate this in a year when Javon Evans is on your main roster. I'll recircle back to this. And you tell me what you think, because here's my thing. It's like, look, if that's really what you think, because
they're not gonna do it with him either, because they're gonna say, oh, it's too small. Like, I'm gonna be honest, the real test will be Obafemi.
right, because
That
so that's what I'm saying.
Obafemi's
It's
the real test.
like with Tony, right? He told you how he felt too. And he said, look, he basically Big Swole sucks. And it's like, okay, you think Big Swole sucks? Okay, I'll reassess when an undeniable can't miss black talent is on your roster and what you do with that, right? And like you just said, I look at NXT, a show that I don't even think is very good, but they have a lot of black people on this show.
Absolutely.
And Javon Evans, Obafemi, Trick Williams is the top storyline on that show. Trick Williams, world of charisma. He's a very flawed worker, and I could see that being used against him on the main roster. Javon Evans, charismatic, dynamic, athletic as shit. I think he's can't miss. Like you just said, I could see them easily being he's too skinny. He's not big enough, right? Okay, all right. Pick at that. What are you going to say about Obafemi now? Because you like big men. Y'all like pushing monsters.
He's perfect.
You've been looking for another Brock Lesnar. You've been looking for that monster. You push Jacob Fatu. You push the former Jonah, Bronson Reed. You push Braun Breaker. Okay, what happens with Oba now? And so again, it's like, because Omos is also on their roster, and the rap on him was he can't work. Okay.
They sent, and honestly, I think I'm even more pissed about Omos is because you sent him to Noah, he got over, and you brought him home just to not do anything with them, and he went to Noah was a giant. He was killing it.
Yes, I'm not about to put his shit on blast, but he like really felt like he was belonging somewhere finally, and like connecting and working as a pro wrestler, and he was very happy during his time in Noah. And the craziest part about it, Lyric, is he didn't expect to be pulled, nor did Noah expect him to be pulled at that time. The idea was, okay, y'all get Inamura, we get Omos, and we'll just see how this goes. You know, it wasn't like, yo, we're keeping him for a month, because they haven't given Inamura back. They just have
you could literally tell with basically how it was structured with the Team 2000 and stuff. Like, he was supposed to be there for a while, and I was actually really looking forward to it. And I think that it was really cool and I think I actually put a count of out of the entire that whole first week in January, you had about 6 or 7 black wrestlers competing for titles or tournament championships during that time. I think you had Athena and Willow were in the International Women's Cup. You had Mercedes was doing the, she had the Tokyo Dome match. Kevin Knight was at the Dome. Zara Zucker was wrestling for a championship at the TJPW show. You had Omos at Noah. There was some really cool stuff, happening. And I really hate that for him. I really hate that for the talent specifically, because he was really killing it over there.
I'm gonna ask you a question, Larry. We'll just get negative. Fuck it. Do you think Triple H was seeing them tweets of like, damn, y'all couldn't do this, and he's seen them clips of
yes,
Omos?
100%. I 100% think that's exactly what happened.
Yes. You think he's like, man, fuck that shit, man.
Because people gave him the benefit of the doubt originally, remember? Yeah. Because people were like, oh, maybe they just pulled him for the Rumble. Then the Rumble happened. He's not in the Rumble. People did give him the benefit of the doubt originally. Everybody's like, oh, they're only pulling him because he's going to be in the Rumble. No. We haven't seen him. It's April 9th when we're recording this.
Can you give him back, please? Can you just give him back?
Trust me, no one could use it, please.
Man, man, it sucks that these people look again. You got to pay the bills, and you can't rattle the cage. It would have been so beast to be tweeted like, "Just send me back" or some shit like that.
But you know what, though? Here's the thing, and I think that's my problem. And because of the not being able to rattle the cage stuff, you understand. I think anybody who's paying attention understands where black wrestlers, particularly in WWE, are right now in this political climate. Absolutely. And I think where the company is shifting, a lot of them can't speak for themselves in hopes of having food on their table, right? And to be able to feed their families. But this is where fans come in. And I do think like that is the current difference. And like I said, any of these things are liable to change at any given moment in time. But that is the difference right now, I would say, between the AEW fan base and let's say the WWE fan base, because I think AEW fans will complain about anything. Like, they will complain about anything. Like, imagine you said, I don't like, who's like, imagine you send Hobbs off to New Japan, right? Yeah. And snatch him off the tour for like on night 3. and you don't see him on AEW programming for 4 months after that.
Oh, there'd be bloodshed. There'd be bloodshed.
Like, what are you doing? Like,
yeah.
There's, like, there's no question of people are going to ask questions, but I also think AEW fans are just more likely to actually watch other wrestling, right?
Mm-hmm.
Versus WWE fans, they don't care. Like, they're just not paying, or not even that they don't care, they're just not paying attention, in that way.
They're not checking for it like that. Yeah.
No, and I think specifically for Black wrestling fans, I think this goes back before then. I've been saying this honestly since Montez and Angelo Dawkins were speaking out.
Oh
and
my goodness.
They were selectively doing those interviews. They were putting those quotes out,
On
and they
purpose.
needed people to back them up. That was what it was for. Like, they were taking risks even then. They did it because they needed that support, in the sense of they needed somebody to say, hey man, we standing with you, we need this. And they didn't get it, like they didn't get it. And
Lyric, I'll put it to you like this. And I'm sure you're very aware of this, but it's like letting the audience in on a secret here. When pro wrestlers do interviews, in their mind, a lot of times they're trying to send a message to someone somewhere, and a lot of times it's to their own bosses, because that's how fucked wrestling is in terms of communication. That you can't just, sometimes you're just not in a position to go right to someone's face and be like, I think you're booking me horribly, And so sometimes what wrestlers will do, and it has happened to me, is they'll send me the Fightful headline and be like, hey, retweet that for me, bro. And so I have a sneaking suspicion Montez is like, yo, who got me? But the problem is, a lot of the WWE fan base, unfortunately, is they worship the brand, not the talent. And so it's like, who are you to speak against this?
And can I say something else? And this is they feel the exact same way Booker does.
And it's just, yeah. And so, like, Montez being like, I've been very frustrated, and I'll just straight up say, I'll say it. I don't give a shit. When Bobby quit, what Montez's reaction was? Number one, he understood his frustration. And he was just looking around like, yo, how did y'all let this flop? Like, what is going on? What are y'all doing? And he basically was like, y'all know, like, I'm not a bitch, right? Like, I'll leave if I really have to, right? Like, I hope y'all realize, like, I'll go with him, Like, people got to stop playing with me. And it was one of those weird, like, call your bluff situations. And, like, they eventually have given him the chance. Like, now they're the champions, but the sentiment remains. And again, like I said, the fans, it's like, how dare you speak against the monolith? How dare you speak against the big company? Like they did this for you, they did that for you. And so, like, he's not, instead of getting the support, like, these people become like the bad guys temporarily in front of the eyes.
Yes. And how they felt about Montez, for me, should have been clear after the reality show dropped. When the reality show dropped, I watched every episode. Like, here's the thing, I don't watch WWE. I really don't care. But only parts that I actually I'm a huge Bianca Belair fan. Like, I have her merch. Like, I was like huge Bianca Belair fan.
Yeah.
Well, anything that she does, like, I'm really into, and I am a fan of Montez. And when you watch the reality show, one of the biggest plot lines of the reality show is the fact that Bianca is so successful, but the company refuses to see him as a major player.
Wow.
And during it and after it, the fact that they didn't put a title on him, make it anything, that showed you exactly how they felt.
Because you would think that WWE would be like, all right, so the follow-up to this is we give you your moment. You know what I mean? Like, right. That's crazy.
Like, they didn't even put the tag belts, even from a marketing standpoint. They were going everywhere, right? Like, if she has the women's belt, at least have some type of gold on him, right? They didn't care. They didn't care. That should have showed how they felt. And I feel like it's really unfortunate, because even if it goes back to, for me, Shelton Benjamin, in the sense of, think of that class that Shelton Benjamin came from, with Brock Lesnar and John Cena and Batista. And he was the one who didn't end up becoming, like, the big world champion. Some people were like, oh, they didn't let him talk, or he couldn't talk, or he couldn't do this. Guess what? The rest of those guys couldn't at first either. But gave them the tools that they needed to develop into who they were supposed to be. And I think that, go ahead.
Batista couldn't talk for years, but they made
No,
a project. Cena couldn't promo. Randy still barely could talk. Like
no.
all
And
those people were projects.
no, they were. And here's the thing: he was the best wrestler out of all of them, and
Yeah.
I think that he was given a mammy character,
Mhm.
and he wasn't given the tools. And so when people say that, oh, we don't have any black wrestler main event talents yet, maybe that is true. But have they actually been developed? And I
Yeah.
think that is one thing that AEW did with Swerve, and that's how I knew Swerve was going to be the one, simply because whenever something didn't work, they found something else.
Yeah.
Remember, Swerve still isn't like the best talker, but
No.
when he first started, kind of terrible.
hmm
And they just kept working. They put him in a tag team. Okay, he did well there. They
hmm
put him in. They tried the mogul. What is it? The mogul affiliates.
Mogul affiliates
Didn't work.
with what were the names? It was Trench and
Trench and Parker Bordeaux.
oh my god. Yeah, terrible group. Yeah.
That didn't work. Okay, we're gonna put him with the embassy.
Yep.
Okay,
November.
he's past that. Oh, we just gonna keep him with Prince Nana. They kept doing different things to make it work because they genuinely wanted it to work. When a company, as
It's
we've learned,
conviction.
as we've learned from the Death Riders, as we've learned from Shota Umino, when a
Yeah.
company wants something to work, they will not give up.
Yes. Listen, it's about conviction, and the Booker decided this is where I'm gonna get to. And when there's a speed bump in that, you don't just drive completely off the road.
No,
Every Booker has their favorites where they insist on doing them. We've seen it to this very day, like you just said with the Death Riders, and then even on the other side, as a random example, right? Triple H just really likes Damian Priest, and so the last
yes,
3 years, he's just like, "Yo, I'm gonna make him a guy." And throughout that process, there have been many times where people are like, "Are you sure, bro?" He's like, "Yes, yes." And look, more power to you, but like that's the point. It's like, so then if you can set out to make it happen, that's proof that like any company can make anything happen if you devote the right assets and attention,
absolutely.
and
We
there was a conviction to get him to a certain point.
and yeah, and now we've gotten to a point to where there are so many stars you can see that level of investment of, like, for
Yes.
example, I see Kevin Knight, right?
Yeah.
People, they made it very clear from like that first week, no, we are invested in him. And I will say, when AEW, especially with their young talent, and I think Mariah May and Kyle Fletcher also come to mind here, when they make their investment clear, like, these are our future that we're building around this, it's very clear.
Yes.
And I said this, I think I said this on somebody's podcast a couple weeks ago. We're getting to the point to, when I was talking about the night signing up, we're getting to a point to where people are realizing that they could be mega stars in NXT, but NXT was not the dream.
hmm
People don't dream of the Performance Center. People dream of WrestleMania.
Correct.
When you see that conversion rate of who's going to WrestleMania, when you look at Carmelo Hayes versus what Braun Breaker is doing versus what
Oh,
Tiffany Stratton is doing.
lyric, the very same draft class. This is last year, right?
Mhm.
Top 4 picks out of NXT. I don't remember the order, but there was Braun Breaker, Lyra Valkyria, Tiffany Stratton, and Carmelo Hayes. Lyric Swinton. Braun Breaker is the Intercontinental Champion, and he's wrestling at WrestleMania. Lyric Swinton. Tiffany Stratton is the Women's Champion, and she's going to be wrestling at WrestleMania. Lyric Swinton. Fucking Lyra Valkyria is the IC Champion, and she will be at WrestleMania. Carmelo Hayes is the sidekick of The Miz.
Say
Same
hey to that
draft class.
Battle Royal, buddy.
Same draft class. Same draft class. It
And
just
he was the star.
yeah,
Like,
he was the guy.
the guy. And it takes an intentional level of devaluing to get there. And and I feel like I wish we were having that conversation, and I wish that people were willing to, I would say, fight for black talent. Like, just fight for black talent, because I'm gonna be honest, I don't really care. Like, I'm going to Mania week and I'm actually skipping the WrestleMania part.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe I would have actually considered going to Mania if
Mm-hmm.
like there were people I wanted to see or anything. But it's just not.
Absolutely.
It's not there.
Mm-hmm.
And I just feel like it's only getting worse. And now you have people comfortable now, like now you
defending
have
it,
people
defending it.
comfortable. You have people comfortable saying it. You got people comfortable saying we don't need black wrestlers at the top of the card because we have Jey Uso.
Like, what are you
We have
talking about?
Samoans.
Like, yo, Lyric, this phenomenon. The thing is, I feel like they've been soft launching that one for
Yes,
years. They've been soft
yes.
launching it
And
because
then they placated you. They put all the rappers out here. They said we got Travis Scott and we got Metro Boomin and
they've been soft launch. And the thing is, all those tweets for years, man, Jay feels like da 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 da, and like he's involved, he's invited to the cookout, blah 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 blah. And it's all been a 4-year soft launch to them
yes.
going, hey man, Jay's black, and it's like, what are you talking about, man? I don't got nothing against Jay, but like, what are you talking
And
about?
it's gotten to the point to where you can only imagine how the talent feels of when, and these are not the things that are coming from, like white people's mouths. This is coming from their community. Their community is saying, these are black fans saying that
Yes,
I'm actually cool with none of these niggas ever winning a championship. We got
yo,
big
Lyric,
moves. We
Lyric.
got
I made a post today about what's going on with Mello, right? The
Mhm.
biggest pushback I got in my replies, because most people agreed with me, the biggest pushback I got was from black WWE fans.
I believe it.
And my jaw dropped because people going like, man, y'all aren't patient, man. Like y'all need to understand, man. It's a process, man. Shit ain't gonna happen in a year. I'm like, well, shit happened in a year for Ron Breaker. Shit happened in a
It's,
year.
it's tippy time. I don't know what you're talking about. What do you mean? Let's wait. It's tippy time.
If and all I would ask is, would Triple H ever look at a Braun Breaker and go, yeah, in a year I'm gonna put him with the Miz?
Yeah.
They're not doing that. They're not doing that because
No.
it'd be objectively crazy. So
No.
it, it's
And
like,
that's why I say over Femi is really the true test.
I agree.
Truly.
I agree.
Truly.
It just
And
it's yeah. The other thing I wanted to touch on, Lyric, because you were mentioning this thing about like how it's tough when you're talent sometimes to say certain things because of the position you're in. And you know who comes to mind the best is Big E. And
oh yeah.
two moments stick out to me. A couple years ago, Lyric, someone put a mic in his face and said, "What are your thoughts on the Vince McMahon situation?" And he looked dead in the camera and said, "I have many opinions." And then he paused and went, "But I also like paying my bills, so I will refrain from answering." And it's like, on one hand, you could look at that and go, "Oh, that's cowardly, that's this and that." But it's also like, I get it, bro. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's not your fault. You weren't put in this position. Like, you had nothing to do with any of that. You know what I mean? And it's like, it's almost unfair for Big E to be the guy to jump out on, in front of a
Yes.
grenade and put a fire out. You know what I'm saying?
And at this point, Big E's contract is a courtesy.
Right. And
What
so
is it?
he knows he's in a bad spot with that. It's like, what do you want me to? Come on, man. Like, of course it's like he's basically telling you, bro. I agree with all of y'all. Like this, like, you know what I mean? I agree with all of y'all. Even today, look, did you see they had Tony Hinchcliffe?
Yeah, I saw the clip.
He did commentary for a New Day match on TV, and he makes the joke like, "Man, that was like that move was stiffer than Big E's neck or whatever, right?" And they asked Big E his opinion, and his quote, if you really translate it, is basically, "Of course, I think it's whack, bro, but like, what do you want me to
But he
say?"
can't say anything about it. And I think that's also, here's the thing. I do think that internet wrestling Twitter takes things too far, like a lot. And I think that it's gotten harder to control. I think, especially for those who have been on Twitter for years, this ain't the same Twitter that we was on 3 years ago.
No,
It is not. Like, it's just not. I think a lot of the things that people will understand are mutually jokes or anything is just not that anymore. So I completely get it when people are saying, like, people go too far. But like I said, it does go back to the sense of core fan bases used to have some type of like some gravitas, some like, oh no, like he doesn't have to say anything because we will,
right.
And I get really sad because even though I don't watch like WWE anymore, all of those moments, like, Big E winning the championship and Kofi Mania and Bianca, Sasha, those are the moments that really did shape me. You know, as a wrestling fan, I feel like there are certain things that are bigger than, you know, our personal tastes. I think there are certain things that are bigger. Those moments are so important. And when you allow people to talk about those people who are responsible for those type of moments, it's only a matter of time when the Big E's turn into the Bianca Belairs, and it's a very slippery slope. And it's so unfortunate because now we're at a point to where, and this isn't like any shade or anything. I think that these things are great, and I think that, you know, but you have more outlets and publications, because like I'm in the editorial world. Black publication, they're talking about WWE a lot. Like they're writing about it a lot, and most of it is about the past. They're doing greatest black wrestlers lists, and half of these people haven't wrestled in years. And it's focused on the past, and nobody's focusing on who's next. Who's like The Rock is great, godly, you know. And Ron Simmons, we get it. We acknowledge you. Like we acknowledge our history, the Jazzes, the Jacquelines, but nostalgia has clouded, I feel like, our judgment to the point to where when you look up who's the future, who's going to be that next household name for your children?
I was just going to say that. Who are you going to look like? Who are the kids going to look back on, and like from today's thing that we're like really putting on? If anything, they're creating a generation of what ifs and could have beens. You know what I mean? Where it's like the same way that we looked, and we like for years people would post a Shelton highlight reel of the stuff he was doing in the 2000s, going, man, what happened? Why didn't they do anything with him? They're gonna be doing the same thing with Montez Ford.
We're gonna it's like the exact same, even down to the world's greatest tag team type stuff. Just like the Pride will be known as essentially Team Angle in the sense, to a lower extent, but yeah, that's exactly where we are. And I think my favorite interview that I've ever done got to interview, you know, Shelton Benjamin, that South Carolinian King, and you hear him talk about his career of knowing that you have that type of potential, knowing what you're capable of, and knowing how good you are, and not being able to do anything about it. And he specifically talked about how he didn't feel truly valued until he went to Japan, and that's why I do think it's important to uplift what Black wrestlers are doing in Japan, because honestly, I haven't seen nobody fail yet. I haven't really seen nobody go over there and fail yet. Even Omos went over there, killed it. I think, you know,
and worked. Yeah,
absolutely, it works. It
works. It adds to your value. And then the other thing is like the offices at WWE begrudgingly respect you when you do it. That's the crazy part, because like it out of nowhere you become a bigger commodity, and that's when they're hitting you back up, you know, offering more money and saying, hey, nah, we love to see you back. We love the work you've been doing. We've been seeing it, blah 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 blah, all that type of shit. That really does happen, and unfortunately, because I hate that wrestling has to work this way. Sometimes to get respect, you got to basically slap them in the face and say, yo, I'm out. I'm gonna do my own thing. I'm actually just gonna do my own thing, because you know negotiations with Mercedes and WWE didn't work out to come back, but they were coming back on some like, hey, you know, like you really like after the Stardom stuff she was doing, right? They were coming to her all of a sudden, like, and the energy was very different. And the point I'm getting at is like they look at you different when you actually say, I don't actually need you to like make it, and I'm gonna do my own thing and succeed.
I think what Mercedes did, and we won't even really know the full effects of it until probably years from now. Mercedes opened doors that nobody knew existed.
I agree.
Like nobody. There are diva stands who now watch Stardom regularly.
Yes.
There are diva stands that now regularly watch New Japan. Like there are people who only knew wrestling existed on television, who now are using VPNs and Baked Live, and they got New Japan World accounts, and they're watching AEW, and they're watching all these different things, and not even just that, they're expanding. They're watching Sendai, they're watching TJPW, places that Mercedes hasn't even been. And I'll be honest, I started doing wrestling content 2 months after Mercedes after Battle in the Valley, in the sense of, and I remember it's kind of like what you were saying earlier of like people telling you what you should do, what you should be doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember going back and forth with myself at the time of just, should I be doing raw reviews? I was like, I'm not sure if this is me. I was like, I'm gonna try this thing for a while. I think I just want to talk about, this cool wrestling I'm finding in Japan. I think it's really
Right.
cool.
And again,
Um,
even if it's highlighting wrestling that like maybe it's not going to draw in 1,000
it was
viewers, or
just stuff I like, right? Like,
right, it's stuff you like, and eventually people are gonna gravitate to you and enjoy what you got going on, and they'll just watch it, and that's how niches work, and that's how this works in general. And so that's to me the that's the recommended approach to this content space.
absolutely. And I think Mercedes also, it made it less stark that a black woman was doing it, of just she broke almost, I don't know, kind of like a color barrier of this is the, and I'll just be
It's
honest,
true.
now that I'm in like year 2, I remember like that first year or so, man, I felt like I got ignored by just about everybody, like,
Mm.
especially the purists, like, and like now, by the time we got to Wrestle Kingdom, Wrestle Dynasty, man, I had invites. Can you come on this podcast? Can you come on this podcast? Please, please, please,
Yep.
please, please.
Yep.
It broke the barrier, like it broke the barrier in the sense of somebody can be a formidable player
Mm-hmm.
in those type of spaces. But and like all that starts with one person saying that actually no, I'm going to go get my value elsewhere, and like that's Mercedes in this case.
Yep.
And look at the trickle down effect. I'll always say that one night women's tournament at New Japan Resurgence is the
Yeah.
catalyst, was the catalyst of this era of women's wrestling, which I believe
People got jobs off that night.
everybody got paid. Everybody that worked got paid.
Lyric, I can tell you for a fact, for a fact, WWE's radar went off on Stephanie after that night. So like, so many people got paid, got booked, got busy, and Mercedes knows this. She knows this. She alludes ever so often. She basically is like, yeah, I be putting people on. I get people paid. That's what I do. And that's a good thing. And the cool thing about it, Lyric, is when she left and she was talking about the things that she wanted to do outside of WWE, she was saying how like I want to expand women's wrestling and I want to take it global and I want to go global and I want to like just blow it up and take it to heights it's never reached. I remember she was replying to certain people like saying like what I want doesn't exist yet, and that was such a cool goal to me because I thought it was achievable. And beyond that, people were like, I remember like when she just did the early Joshi run, people wanted her to go back after that, and it's like
Yes.
there's still so much to do.
I think
Like,
also,
look,
Mercedes has approached this in a way of just where she never has acted like this is beneath her. Like she doing House of Glory shows, bro.
right, because it's love of the game, but it's also like this. She has this determination to carry out this mission, and I think it's so cool. She's giving back to so many people, helping a ton of people, and again, it's like, look, I don't think anybody is opposed to someday, years down the line, she comes back for some type of horsewoman reunion thing or whatever, right? But it's like,
I'm opposed, but continue.
sure, but nevertheless, in this time right now, in her prime years, I think if you're a wrestling fan, and am I biased or whatever? Like, sure, but like, I just think her setup right now is ideal. It's
Absolutely.
ideal, and it's very helpful and effective for a lot of people. And I don't think anybody should be wanting that to stop anytime soon. Um,
I think, and also even going back to, it's it's a barrier when you look at the way that Mercedes is booked, you look at the way that Athena is booked, you look at Willow Nightingale. You hopefully, when Queen Aminata comes back, like she gets, pushing those conversations of this is, I've never seen, I think, Black talent organically be pushed the way that we're seeing right now. And I think a part of that is expanding in the sense of
mhm,
understanding that, and it's not even from a WWE versus AEW thing of just look,
mhm,
if none of these companies are going to main event, you want to know who is going to give you a main event? New Japan.
yeah,
You go main event Resurgence. You're going to go
yep,
main event Capital Collision. And if you build it, they will come. And I think that is a very important thing for women's wrestling, particularly. Even I think as a creator, from a media standpoint, what I would ideally want to do, it doesn't exist yet. Like none of this exists yet,
Mhm.
and I think that that's also really hard to grapple with, particularly in a time where we expect change and progress to be so instant.
Yeah.
Uh, if you genuinely want to do this for a long time, be in the part of the wrestling field, if you, especially as a woman, or specifically as a black wrestler, if you're not white or Samoan, if you want to do this, you have to just be real. You have to really lock in and understand that it's going to take a while for you to probably get where you want to go, and you have to, I think, be adaptable. I think the best thing that you can be in wrestling is flexible, is be a jack or jill of all trades,
Mhm.
because we've gotten to the point to where as long as we are in this, I was about to say two-party system, it counts the same way, honestly,
Yes.
but as long as we are in, like, this two-party system, at the end of the
Mhm.
day, it's people are going to continue to get left behind.
Yeah.
And being able to take your career into your own hands is something that separates the good from the great.
Yeah, I agree. I completely agree. That's why I will always applaud and salute talent that elect to do this in the face of in a wrestling environment and space where increasingly many fans unfortunately are not doing that with wrestlers. You know what I mean? Where like people will take things into their own hand and try to make something of their careers outside of like the systems that they feel were not doing anything for them. And other people will kind of scoff at this or roll their eyes or like down talk them. And it's like you really shouldn't, because at the end of the day, they have a finite amount of time to be doing what they're doing with their bodies. And it's like, man, let them go out. Let listen, even if it fails.
I
Let them
think Santana's a good example of that.
I respect
I have
that.
a
I
lot of
respect the
respect for
hell out of
him.
that dude.
I have a lot of respect for him, like of just okay, like hey, like even if yeah, even if he's not getting the exposure that he would like, betting on yourself and believing that you are, a single talent and that you are worthy. And, who knows what the future might bring.
Mm-hmm.
But you won't get there if you don't bet on yourself, and
Yep.
leave it. I have a lot of respect for him for that.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Santana when it comes to that. And I remember when people were clowning on him, like, man, just grab the tag rope and you'll get used. But look, if he doesn't see himself in that way and doesn't want to do it. You know what I mean? Like you're only gonna be 33 one time, 34 one time. So it's up to you to take agency on that type of stuff. So I respect a dude like him, and I don't know what the next step is honestly for him, but I was really like whenever I kind of parachute into TNA sometimes to watch it, and one of the people I like watching when I pop in is him, and I'm always taken aback. I'm like, damn, this dude got really good. Like, he got really good because like he was always like a guy who was a nice tag team dude, you know,
Yes.
and I like Santana and Ortiz as a team. Um, but like I never saw Santana as this like, man, he's a can't miss like singles guy you got to push. But he's kind of turned himself into one.
Mhm.
So I always fuck with stories like that in pro wrestling.
Yeah. I think I respect his decision. And I also, the last time I did watch him, I think he was pretty good. He has a match coming up with, I think, Takeshita at House of Glory. I
Mhm.
will be checking that out. We'll see. Like the absence of TNA
Yes.
is I think probably the biggest glaring thing, because TNA just doesn't. I'm not going to say they're going to die. I'm going to be honest. People have been saying that for like the last 15 years. I I've been around long enough to never like say they're going to die, but I
I've said
think,
that to myself like 7 times in the last decade. I'm like,
you
oh,
know,
they're dead. It's
so
over.
I'm never going to go as far to say like TNA is going to die, but I do believe that we've gotten to the point where I don't think it's going to be that catch-all promotion that it
No,
was
no.
for all the people who kind of like fall from the wayside from either,
Mhm.
AEW or WWE, which is worrisome, but that's another conversation. We didn't talk about anything that we were supposed to talk about, but I feel like this conversation was so much better. It's so much better than just a dynasty Sakura
I
Genesis.
I uh I think this is beautiful, lyric. Just the idea that you can just roll the ball out and just talk the game. Just
Mhm.
talk the game. You know what I mean? And
Talk
then the
shop,
time
brother.
goes, and it's like, could you have pulled their paper out and go, all right, so here's the next bullet point. It's like, yeah, we could have done that. We could have done that. But it's like you can do that with anybody. You know what I mean? And it's like this was a Lyric and Ibou conversation. I felt like so. I appreciated that, and I thought this was a valuable use of my time. And I'm gonna listen back to this when I'm at work when this gets posted. So I had fun. I had fun.
Yes, this was a blast. You know what? Last question. Who's
What's
somebody that you're really excited for this year that you think is going to have a fabulous year and that people should be on the lookout for? Any company,
mm-hmm.
preferably black though, since we talk about black wrestlers,
All
but
right,
preferably black or woman.
you know what? I'm gonna because I don't want to do like an obvious one. Like I could easily be like, oh, Kyle Fletcher. You know what I mean? And he's spectacular. But like, let me try to do an underrated lowest of keys one. All right, here we go. LeBron Cozone from DPW is very solid. And coming up, he's going to be wrestling in Japan against Takuya Nomura. And
Yeah, that DPW show.
yeah, I'm looking forward to it. And I think his match is going to turn some heads. I've recently started watching him a little bit, and I was like, yo, man, all right, I see what you're doing. I see what you're doing. So I'm going to shout out him because I think a year from now, he'll be a more coveted name that gets put over. So I'm shouting him out. And I think that's the pick I'm gonna go with. I think that's the pick I'll go with personally.
I have two, and I've mentioned these people before. They've been on the podcast before, but because we're ahead of Mania Week, I think it's important to mention them again.
Mm-hmm.
Maya World and Jada Stone.
Oh my, yes, that's a great one.
Listen, and what I admire about them is that here's the thing: when the WWE ID stuff happened, and all that, I
Yes,
feel like they were overlooked. But the girls are working, and
yes,
I see like what they like. Jada's been having a lot of stuff in TJPW recently. Been over in
mm,
Japan. She's from my hometown. She was actually the first wrestler ever interviewed on this show a few years ago.
mm,
But Maya has a really big Mania week. Going to be wrestling Miyu Watanabe. Listen, I think she's the future. I genuinely believe she's the future. And I think that by the end of this year,
mm-hmm.
she should be in a position similar to what Billy Starks was doing with on Ring of Honor.
I
She
agree.
should be seeing on like that level of that type of talent that should be invested in. If not, she should just be in Japan, honestly, and spend like an extended an extended time there, kind of like a Mariah May 99 matches in 9 months type thing. I
And,
genuinely
and
believe
we saw how big that was for Mariah May
what it
as
changed,
a growth
changed her
opportunity.
life.
Mariah got so much better doing that for a year. You know.
And also look at the framework that started being what everybody else wanted to do.
Yeah.
Like other girls got ID'd off of that,
Right.
going to Mark Gold and I'm not saying anything's wrong with it. Honestly,
Right.
there's worse ways to get noticed. There's way worse ways to get noticed.
Right.
But I see so much, Maya been training with Athena. She works really hard. I think that she has nailed her presentation down. And I think her head is in the right spot. And what I really like about her is that every time that I talk to her, she's always recommending another black wrestler. Like she's always recommending somebody that you should watch, like somebody that she looks up to, she admires. And it's not even the people on TV, it's people in the indies. Like she always takes her opportunity to put somebody else on. So I want to put her on today. Jada Stone too. Those two specifically, I think they're going to have a really good year by the rest of the year.
Yeah, and in general, what I love about the approach, and the last thing I'll say, what I love about that approach is increasingly we're seeing with the big companies, it's hard to get reps and improve at like the right rate sometimes. And it's like WWE doesn't do the house shows that they used to do. And with AEW, it's like you either work on TV or you just don't work. And it's just hard to improve with that setup. We see how it's affected Julia Hart, for example.
Correct.
Right. And so now increasingly what we're seeing, it's plain as day to see for anybody. Sometimes it really is as simple, not as simple, but sometimes it really is as clear as like the people going overseas to wrestle like multiple times in a week. We're seeing how that's affecting their game.
Correct.
So I'm excited for Maya World, and I'm excited to see the wrestlers she'll be a year from now, let alone like right now. You know.
Absolutely. You know, I always feel like the cream rises to the top. You can tell who really wants it, and
Mhm.
I think that's what separated Billy Starks and Nick Wayne. Um, I'll go with Leon Slater too. Even though he was in
Mhm.
the UK, these people were like they were teenagers working the craziest indie schedules you can think of.
Mhm.
I kid you not. When I was in London, Leon Slater I wrestled the show. And he was waiting for his mom to pick him up. Like they were so young, and that type of work ethic, especially having it at such a young age that you have to keep working. I'm really glad that Nick Wayne is doing Best of the Super Juniors, getting him some more reps too. But you can tell who really wants it. Like you can tell who really wants it, and I hope that that is honored by companies when they're recruiting who should be the future.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Shout out to Leon Slater.
Shout out to that the youngest in charge, that king.
Mhm.
Um, but this has come to a close. Thank you so much for coming, Ibou. Do you have anything that you'd like to plug while we're in our way out?
Um, just follow me at Backup Hangman. Follow me at Backup Hangman. And I co-run a Discord called the Self-Made Discord. It's at Self-Made PW on Twitter. And in the bio is the link to our Patreon. And it's a $5 get-in price. And if you go in, you'll have access to all our archived podcast content. And not just podcasts, but all our archived watch along content. And inside the Discord, we do all kinds of fun things like game nights, wrestling pay per view watch alongs, match recommendations, movie nights. We watch anime in there and all kinds of other things, including sports. So really, really fun community that I'm really proud of. I'm really happy with how it's been going. So if you want to see more of me, I'm in there pretty frequently, but I'm also on Twitter at Backup Hangman, and those are the places you guys can find me.
Do you do wing tutorials in the Discord?
Not yet, but people have asked me to do them. Maybe someday. Maybe someday.
Woo. Keep me posted. Anyway, we're all a fan of creating your own spaces here. But you can
Absolutely.
find me at Lyric Wrestling on Instagram and Twitter. Subscribe on YouTube. You're probably watching there already at Lyric
Hmm.
Swift. Um, and I should have some writing coming soon. Oh, also, I wrote the opening article for the Social Suplex newsletter. I wrote a deep dive into the last 10 years of women's wrestling from 2015 to 2025 of American women's wrestling. You can find that at socialsuplex.com. Shout out to them for building that newsletter. I think they're doing incredible work and really uplifting creators in all different facets of wrestling, which I'm all about. So please go support those guys. But yeah, that's it. Thank you for watching Maps and Graps. Thank you for 2 years. I'm so excited. You can see my wall back here. I got a gift to frame some of my work over these last 2 years, but let's keep it rolling. See you next time. Bye.